Ballistic was loaded with VFX shots, over 140 in fact, and I was lucky enough to have a great team that included the amazing Andrew Kramer as my VFX supervisor and his incredible team. They saved the day with quite a few really tough shots. But today we're taking a look at these 3 shots, all of which were done by the latest addition to the Film Riot family, Thompson. But let's jump into Thompson's first shot. First things first, getting the shot. For this, we used spherical lenses instead of the anamorphics that we shot the rest of the film with so that we could get very close, which was the 30 to 300 millimeter lens, and I think we were around 200 millimeters for this shot. We threw the camera on a hi-hat and had Hannah stare right to the side of the lens, almost right into the lens. Eye lines for this type of stuff can be a bit tricky. You have to make sure that you're actually looking into the monitor to get it right. The slightest change can become a massive one in tight shots like these. But I passed this footage off to Thompson, and the first thing that he did was to take the footage into Mocha AE, which comes free with Adobe After Effects CC, and then he tracked Hannah's eye in there. Once he had a good track, he clicked export tracking data and copy to clipboard, then jump back into After Effects, and in here he created a null object that he could paste the Mocha tracking data onto. Hannah's eyes are dark brown, as you can see, and that fact, mixed with the time of day and how quickly we needed to get this shot done, led to her eye being really dark with very little detail to make this effect stand out. So to make this work, you can take a picture of your own eye, or better yet, jump into Adobe Stock and grab an image that matches your talent's eye. Then you can move it into position and pick whip it to the tracking null that you made so that it follows the movements. If you can't find a picture that matches perfectly, you'll have to tweak color and brightness using the tint and curves effect until you have enough of a visual match to the scene. Next, Thompson grabbed the bulge distort effect and positioned it over the new pupil and keyframed the strength to make it look like eye dilating goodness. Then on a new solid layer, he masked around Hannah's eye and linked it to the null track. Then on the eye layer, select the track matte and set it to alpha matte using the solid layer above. After that, he added an adjustment layer above the original footage, used a duplicate of the alpha matte to solo just Hannah's eye, and used the curves tool to make her eye red. For the veins, Thompson grabbed a vein texture for the whites of her eye, set that layer to overlay, and linked it to the null. He used another duplicate of the alpha matte from before so that the veins aren't seen beyond the eye. Then he added a drop shadow and glow effect to bulk up the thickness of the veins, and then adjusted the color to change it from black to a veiny red. And using the vector blur effect, he could make the veins look like they were swelling or contracting. He then added a bevel emboss effect to make them look raised from the surface, and finally keyframed the opacity, vector blur, and bevel to alter the strength over the period of the shot to show her pain growing and retracting, and now we have this. Next up is a quick removal from this shot. Originally, there was a ramp there to launch the car, which makes it an obvious effect, so it had to go. To get this done quickly and easily, the first thing Thompson did was to track both the trailer in the background as well as the ramp itself with the built-in 2D tracker right inside of After Effects, and then he applied both of those tracks to null objects. Then he chose a frame where the other trailer is clearly visible and has the least amount of motion blur, then duplicated the footage, right-clicked, selected freeze frame so that we now have a still image on top. Then we mask out just the front of the trailer and move it over so that it could replace the one behind the ramp. Then he linked to the first null track. Next, make another duplicate of the shot, choose a clear moment of the ramp and freeze it. Thompson then used the clone tool to paint over the ramp, selecting various parts of the surrounding tires to fill it in. Once he was done, he went to Layer, Pre-Compose, then Move All Attributes to a new comp, and this way he could mask just the tires without it affecting the paint effect. He then parented that to the other null and turned on Motion Blur. With this shot, the motion tracking for scale ended up being difficult to track, so Thompson just had to manually go through the timeline and keyframe the scale and anchor points of the nulls at various points to match the scale and position of the original footage. As you can see at the beginning of the clip here, there is dust in front of the lens from the car, so he just adjusted the tires and the trailer layers to blend in by using the curves effect and box blur, tweaking it to match the footage as he went. Then he keyframed the effects to decrease over time as the dust in the footage clears and the objects go into focus. And finally, with all of that done, now we take a quick break and then get into our final shot. Domain.com has all your website needs, including .com and .net domain names and intuitive website builders, so you can take the first steps in creating an identity online. Domain.com is affordable, reliable, and has the tools that you need to build a new website so you can start sharing your ideas with the world. And no domain extension is going to help you tell your story like a .com or .net domain name. And if you want to brand yourself online, Domain.com has over 300 domain name extensions to fit your needs from .club to .space. Of course, they're giving you 15% off their already affordable prices when you get domain names, web hosting, and email. Just use the coupon code FilmRiot at Domain.com's checkout. When you think domain names, think domain.com.
Logo.
Next up, we have this. Originally, it looked like this, but I wanted the shot coming from inside of the holster to affect the opening of the outside of the holster, so again, I sent it to Thompson. For this shot, he knew he would have to film his own stock footage of the smoke to try to best mimic the motion Hannah makes with the gun, as well as filming a burning edge asset for the holster itself. He tracked the holster and assigned that to a null, then he took a still frame from his stock footage of the burnt paper in a similar shape to the holster, masked it out, placed it at the end of the holster, warped it using the liquefy tool, color corrected it to match the footage, and linked it to the null. Then he took several takes of the flames that he shot and did the same thing. Because he filmed the stock footage against a black backdrop, he can set the layers to a screen mode, which removes any of those black areas in the layer. For the smoke, he tracked the ground of the original shot to get the camera motion, not the motion of the holster, since we want the smoke to live in the world independently of the gun. And then he applied that to a new null. He then lined up the smoke, linked it to the camera track, and once again set that layer to screen. He also tinted it black and white with the tint effect and crushed the blacks with the levels effect, then tweaked opacity. Next, you'll need to mask out the smoke and make a separate mask around the incense stick here, keyframing it when it enters the frame and set that mask to subtract. Next, we're going to add a camera lens blur to all the elements to match the camera's focus in the shot and duplicate the original footage, place it on top, and lower the opacity. He did this because the original footage was very flat, but the stock footage that he shot exposed pretty bright, so it helped to balance the shot out more for grading. Finally, he added an adjustment layer with a glow effect just to subtly help that burn vibe, and
logo.
And that's it for today. Check the notes below for links to some other works from Ryan Thompson and our full pack for Ballistic with over 5 hours of footage. And I'll see you next week when I use vibrations from the earth to sea.